I'm Katie Elfering, Director of Consumer Strategist here at Iconoculture, and I cover millennials, media, entertainment, and technology and e-retail. And I'm going to talk about one of our big trends for 2010, social media scale back, or a trend that we affectionately call social media napalm. What we've seen with consumer behavior this year is as social media has become a mainstream behavior and as it has become more of a necessity for many consumers as opposed to just a nice to have, they're getting a lot savvier about how they're integrating social media into their lives and how they're managing their social media profiles. It's less about privacy at this point and much more about control and how consumers are really looking for ways that they can actually control what's being said about them and what they're putting out there in the social media space. What we've seen as a result of that desire for control is a scale back in the way that consumers are using social media. That doesn't mean that there's a mass migration away from Facebook or Twitter. It means that consumers are getting a lot savvier about what they're putting out there, how they're using privacy settings, and what's important to them in terms of how they're perceived in the online space. We've seen a lot of chatter in social media as we've been tracking that around spikes the day that Facebook announces privacy setting changes, the days that Facebook announces changes to their policies allowing for vanity URLs that make searching easier. We've seen different sorts of sentiment put out there around social media where Twitter tends to have a little bit more neutral sentiment because they haven't enforced or changed as many things about their privacy settings, whereas Facebook tends to have less neutral sentiment and significantly more positive and negative sentiment. So we're hearing that chatter from consumers. But we're also seeing this in the consumer behavior and in the ways that different brands and corporations are working with them. We've seen companies like ESPN restrict the amount of twittering that its employees can do, mainly because they don't want to compete with the content they're writing for the site. We've seen a lot of colleges and universities put different sorts of requirements on athletes in terms of what their social media behavior can be and punishing students who don't follow those rules, especially in the college athlete space where they're very concerned about the public image of those athletes. And we've also seen consumers themselves looking for ways to help clean up their social media profiles, with brands helping them along the way. Tools like Whisk-It, a branded Facebook app from Whisk laundry detergent, is one example of how consumers are partnering with brands to change what they're doing in the social media space. Whisk-It works by essentially untagging unflattering pictures of you online or on Facebook. And for those consumers who don't want to have the awkward conversation with their friends, asking them to untag them, it's a really simple solution and a really easy way for them to manage their profiles. What it all really comes down to is a little bit of privacy, but significantly more about control, as consumers are really looking for ways to manage what's being said about them, who's saying it, and how it's being perceived in the online space. Moving forward, we expect to see a lot more attention paid to things like privacy settings, to things like public versus private versus semi-private, and finding ways for consumers to scale back even more away from some of the bigger social networks into more fragmented and niche networks that allow them to express themselves more freely without worry of repercussion.